place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Well, welcome to the Living Free podcast, where we talk about building a life without limits. If you are on Tag's Life Done Free channel and a little confused about why he's not here, he's going to be here in just a second. He agreed to do an interview on my podcast, and it looks like he's streaming to his YouTube. So thanks for that, Tag. Anyway, today we're going to have a discussion about opting out of the system with Tag from Life Done Free. Before we do that, I do want to talk about our featured event of today's show, and it is the Self-Reliance Festival, which is at the Birdsong Marina in Camp. Wrong tab. That's what the back end of the website looks like. Anyway, it's October 4th and 5th in Camden, Tennessee at Birdsong Marina, and we've got some really great speakers, including, guess who? Tag, who is going to be on this live today about opting out of the system, and he has built a life that's free. But what we're highlighting this year is after the Charlie Kirk assassination, we decided that what we do at events is build community and in-person relationships. And we decided to make vendor spots free. So if you're coming and you also want to sell something, grab your ticket, selfreliancefestival.com. And then there's a form you can fill out in the upper left-hand corner to get your vendor spot. Let us know you're going to have a vendor spot, and we will set you up for free with that. I've also linked up with the Unjected folks to have a singles meetup for Saturday night. And of course, we have all sorts of great speakers from the stage. We have Tag from Life Done Free. We have Sean from Off Grid and Growing. Combat Midwife will be in the house. Brooke Whipple, if you've seen her on Alone, you can see her in person. Of course, Joel Riles from Fortress Canine and Sunny Puzikas, and then sorry, I said that wrong. And then Bobby Spags is going to be our MC Magic. We've got a great marketplace coming together, and you will see more vendors on that by the end of the day. I've been redesigning that section to make it easier. Biochar from Bruce DeVries, just all sorts of cool stuff that you can check out at the Self-Reliance Festival, October 4th and 5th. That is our advertisement for the episode. And with that, I am going to bring Tag from Life Done Free, who I don't think I've spoken to in at least 6 months. So Tag, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I titled today Opting Out of the System because you're really good at that. So for my listeners who haven't come across you before, can you give us like Reader's Digest version? Who is Tag from Life Done Free? And why would I want to talk to you about that topic?
Yeah. So, man, what a big question that is. So I'm Tag. I have the YouTube channel Life Done Free, but more importantly, I am a 100% off-grid homesteader, and I live in a large intentional neighborhood that we built. And I hope you noticed the way I worded that. I did not say intentional community, right? I used the word intentional neighborhood on purpose. And so I've spent the last, number of years of my life trying to master this process of community. And it's hard and it's dynamic, as you know, Nicole. There's a lot to it. Little background, just so everybody knows, and I'll make it super quick. I come from the financial world. I ran financial holding companies. That worked great till the COVID vaccine came out. When it came out, they asked me to mandate it for all the employees. I declined, lost my career, and it left me kind of in a place going, well, now what? And so with a little soul searching, what we figured out was that we just could no longer put our happiness, we could no longer put our success in the hands of somebody else. We had to take accountability and responsibility, which is exactly what we did. So that's kind of what gets me here. And I'm looking forward to speaking at the Self-Reliance Festival. I think this will be number 4. Is that right that I spoke there? 3 or 4. And I'll tell you guys, I've had a lot of success at Self-Reliance. There are 4 people who live in our intentional neighborhood that came from my speaking events at Self-Reliance that I met there and who now are productive members of our community. So thank you, Nicole, for that.
Sure. It's funny. Every time I do this event, there's a moment where it feels like everything's really hard in the coordination side. And I'm like, why do I do this every year? And this year I was like, maybe not next year. And that was the week that God had 4 people call me and tell me about the communities they've started somewhere else in the United States and how they met everybody at the Self-Reliance Festival and how happy they were that they had gone. And I was like, okay, I got the message. Thanks. And then went back to work. So, but I feel like I hit that point. I think maybe every event coordinator does, like once every festival when, something big happens, it's always a big change at the end. And you're thinking, what am I going to do to navigate this one? And it's always something different. So, and that's life though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
We got to be intentional, but those hiccups come along the way on it for all of us.
Yeah. I love the term intentional neighborhood. That's what we're building here as well. So I think I told you before we started, our focus has shifted some, and we've been working on building what we call the Holler Hub, which has a place for nomads to come through. So putting in some RV spots and camping cabins, and we have rentals that people can come through and learn off-grid and homesteading things, but also having multiple additional homesteads around us. Because right now we're it's 3 neighbors together and an extra property that's about to have a 4th neighbor. So it's small, but I think that's how you have to start. Like originally it was my homestead and the dude next door.
Yeah.
That was it. And that neighborhood concept to me is a foundation in ownership. And that ownership is what empowers people to build the life that they want rather than having to comply with a bunch of weirdnesses.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people in this life tell me, why would I trade one master for another? And at the end of the day, this is why sovereignty matters so much and why I think it's the critical building block to community, and that without it, you're doomed to fail. And so we focus hard on it. You know, in our community, we have 3 main building blocks that we focus on, but the foundational one of those 3 is individual sovereignty. And so every decision we make has to align with that process, or we won't do it.
So what does that look like? What's an example of that?
Yeah, so like we'll make no rule or no plan or none of those kind of things from a community perspective that would infringe upon the rights of the individual, that the collective will never have a bigger voice than the individual, and that we will work hard to ensure that those individual rights are maintained. And, you know, I'm not going to tell somebody what they can grow, what they can't grow. I'm not going to tell somebody what they can build, what they can't build, where they can work, how they're involved. You know, I'm not going to mandate any of those kinds of things because, again, to me, it begins with sovereignty.
Yeah. So how does that, have you run into any like weird challenges because that's one of the rules?
Oh, 100%.
The rule that's not a rule, basically.
Yeah, 100%. You know, one of the ones that has come up recently in this is code of conduct. There's been some conversation inside our community about, hey, we should create a basic code of conduct because it protects everybody. Hold on a second. You have to be very, very careful right here, right? Because again, this is where we're getting into the collective trumping the individual. And my personal stance on this is, you want to create rules and guidelines, create them for the governors, create them for the committees, create them for the people who make these decisions. Don't create them for the individuals. You know, I think it's fascinating. Such a little thing, but our founding fathers, when they formed our documents, they did not give our Constitution, our Bill of Rights don't really give us any rights. What they do is they hamstring the government from taking the rights that were given to us by our Creator. And so to me, this is a super important point. So let's govern the governors. Let's not govern the individuals. And I think that helps us be safe. Now, I will tell you though, Nicole, not everybody's on my side of the camp. So that's just my side.
Well, I'm not surprised to hear that, because when you have multiple neighbors getting together, working on stuff and becoming an intentional neighborhood, there's going to be different perspectives. How do you navigate those kind of conversations?
Yeah, what a great question. You know, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to culture. And if you can, which you say that word is a gigantic word, Nicole. You know this. This is not something you just say, here's our culture and boom, there it is. But I think when we can focus our energy on, you know, that public discourse, disagreement is healthy, that we welcome it. And I think if you can build a culture that says we're not always all going to agree, you know, but here are the founding principles that we'll refer to in any decision we make. And for us, it's individual sovereignty, perpetual sustainability, and cooperative security. Those are the points that we focus on in our community. So I think you just have to build a culture of acceptance, a culture of it's okay to disagree, you know, a culture of I don't hate you just because I disagree with you. But again, that's a lot easier said than done because there's humans involved.
Right. Well, and the narrative and what we're taught through other exposures in society is if we don't agree on some little thing, we have to be arch enemies. I like to tell the story of I was in a community on a phone app that acts like a CB radio, and land came up for sale near me. And I said, hey, there's this really good deal on, 15 or 16 acres. And one of the people who I often disagree with politically on that said, oh, but you wouldn't want me as your neighbor, Nicole. And I said, that's not true. I would want you as my neighbor because I know you're a doer. I know that you care about, personal responsibility, and fundamentally, we agree on the big picture things. That we disagree on exactly how to execute that for immigration or whatever, it doesn't really matter to me. So I would love to have you as a neighbor. And the minute I told him that, we've been friends to this day. Up until then, I think he saw me as an adversary.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And I totally agree with that. And I've gotten in some heat in our community a little bit when I say things on my YouTube channel, like, I would welcome a Muslim. I would welcome, someone who loved somebody different than what I seen. I would welcome those kind of things. And I truly would personally. Again, I'm just one person of a big community, but I think at the end of the day, we got to center our focus around why are we doing this? And we're doing this for freedom, and we're doing this for liberty. And if we can all agree that freedom is critical, and we can all agree that property rights are absolute, the First Amendment's absolute, if we can all agree to these kinds of things, I think the rest of the stuff becomes kind of noise to those who are emotionally intelligent.
Right. And if they're not, then it's time to work on emotional intelligence. Do you do anything to help facilitate better mental health in the neighborhood, or does do those around you do that?
Yeah, I think again, now we're coming back to culture, and creating a culture that embraces the suck, that says, hey, this is hard. Nicole, living this life is not easy. This is not, I'm going to go, because I think everyone falls in love with this romantic thing of I'm going to go homestead. You're smiling because it ain't like that. We get up, me and my wife get up every day. We get up first thing, we work all day long. We're coming in as the sun is going down. Now we've got to create dinner, and then we try to eat dinner. And then by the time you get to bed, it's hard. So I think creating the culture of embracing the suck and that happiness, freedom isn't a destination, it's a journey, and that we're going to celebrate our wins and our losses. And it's part of learning. And when it don't go right, let's say, hey, that was, that was my training, right? That was my training of getting better so I could do it again the next time. And it's just about culture. But Nicole, I'll tell you, our community, and I've been all over the country. I've never seen a community like ours. It's one of a kind in my book. However, it's not free of its problems like that, where people say, I don't feel like I was treated fairly, or, I didn't like that, or I felt like that was a setup question, or whatever it is, But again, I think it comes down to really working hard on culture and having 3 or 4 or 5 leaders who understand that culture is the fundamental. And without that good culture, you're just going to, struggle the entire way.
Yeah, we've been really talking about taking the next step, and here's when you want to use a counselor or a psychologist. And here are some psychologists we might want to talk to. And the hard part is getting people to admit that they are willing to accept help to change the thing they already know needs to be changed, right? I think that because it's so stigmatized, especially men who are just supposed to deal with it. And sometimes you need to talk to somebody to deal with it, right?
Yeah, 100%. But I think if you have a few, however many, but you have a few leaders, and I'm not talking about appointed leaders, Nicole. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about leaders who understand culture matters, who are compassionate, who do give a shit, and will invest in someone else to pick up the phone and call. I've got a couple people in my community when I'm frustrated, and I have those moments, that I can pick up the phone and they can talk me down off a cliff, or, I have those people in my life. So you talk about, someone can get counseling, and I look at it like, if we can build the culture internally, there is your counseling. You've got someone who will pick you up if you fall. We won't let you completely destroy anything. We'll get involved first. But I agree with you.
Yeah, and it's something that is stigmatized, and anything that's stigmatized then becomes harder to be open about. But if we know where people are coming from, I think the openness is something we've been trained to subjugate in ourselves. Like our opinions always get hedged with, well, this is just my opinion, but blah, 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 blah. Well, do I have to say that every time? Because that's a huge waste of words, first of all, throughout your life. And secondly, that makes you sound like you're not confident in your opinion. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do is head off an attack. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the attack mentality. We have to step out of the attack mentality to have a productive conversation.
Well, I think part of living free too, isn't it an absolute, unwavering commitment to truth? I mean, I don't know how you ever get free without it. And so to recognize I'm struggling, or to recognize this is hard, or whatever it is, I think is part of that truth. And you got to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be willing to be wrong.
Right. That's a great one.
That's no fun, is it?
Yeah, no, not usually. But I've this. I've run many businesses in my life, and one of the attributes I always looked for in a leader was humility. Could they say in front of their troops, that one's on me, my bad, I'll get it better next time, and having the ability to say that that's okay. And if you can't say I'm sorry, if you can't say I'm wrong, you can't be a leader.
Yeah, and if you can't forgive somebody who is also wrong, you also can't be a leader.
Also true.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool.
Forgiveness is a big thing.
Yeah, well, it's a huge thing. And to understand we're all flawed. Tag's not perfect. I'm going to make decisions that aren't right. Some good, some bad. I'm going to say things I want to take back, but can't, but I'm flawed. And I think if everyone starts that and says, hey, I'm flawed, community will go a long way.
Yep. Okay. So why did you decide to be completely off grid, move to a homestead, start growing your own food, and get a bunch of people excited about that who could then live nearby as a way to opt out of the system?
Yes. Oh my goodness. What a gigantic question this is. So what I realized in my experiment with work and being in the system and all of this, I came to some really hard conclusions. And, one of those was every part of my life was dependent upon someone else. And because it was dependent upon someone else, I was asking them permission for my existence. And so the first question that me and my wife tackled was, how do we limit, I call it stroke. You've heard me talk about it on stage at Tennessee, how do I limit the stroke from the outside world? Because the truth is I didn't go to homesteading to save the earth. I didn't go off grid to be more energy, cautious. I didn't do any of those things. I did it so they couldn't hang it over my head like a carrot. And so that's really what started my journey. And I looked at it, so funny. I looked at it from a physical sense at first. Okay, I've got to get off grid. I've got to get water. I've got to grow a garden. I've got to, grow food. I've got to go do all of those things. But as I have matured through it, I'm realizing more and more that it's 90% mental and it's 10% physical, And so after I go through this and we get off grid and we do all of these things and we're embracing the suck because Nicole, again, it sucks sometimes. As you kind of go through that, what I came to realize pretty quick is that one, I'm getting older. And two, there isn't enough hours in the day to do it all. Me and my wife on my farm we are not capable of securing our property 100% of the time, growing enough food for all of us, producing enough, whatever it is, there's just not enough hours. And so if we could find a way to get others who believed the way we believed, that maybe what we could do is share some of those responsibilities and then together we could all live free. And so I had a conversation with my neighbor. And we said, let's go try to build a town, not a geographical town, but an ideological, a town of thought of here we agree upon these things. And it started with just two of us. And within 5 years, I don't know what, and within my just very close geographical, area, there's 40 farms out there now. And, that we're all kind of, learning and doing it together. So the need of community was a selfish need. And I'll be the first to admit it. It was, I can't do it alone. But it's blossomed into this beautiful thing. And then getting out of the system was also a selfish need. I did not want to get back into a situation where one person with one arbitrary decision could take everything from me. And that's kind of what did it. And here we are.
Yeah. In hindsight, do you wish you'd done it sooner in your life?
Oh, yes. If I knew back then what I know now, it's so crazy. I was always so afraid, my wife drove a Beamer and life was good and we got to travel and we got to do all these things. And so I stayed in a system that I knew was corrupt because I was a coward. I knew these things. I knew the system preyed upon people, but because I was towards the top of the, food chain, it didn't get me quite as bad. And because it paid good, we'd just deal with it. And I lied to myself under this guise of, someday I'll make the change, but right now it's just not the right time, So yeah, looking back at it, I could have pulled this off a lot earlier. I could have accomplished way more things during the course of my life through entrepreneurism and, things like that because I'm good at it, had I jumped on that, earlier in my life. But I don't spend a lot of time in the rearview mirror, Nicole.
Well, you can't. On a homestead, you can't. We do things on our homesteads that are learning experiences and can have hugely damaging impacts on accident. Yeah. And it feels bad when it happens, especially if it's livestock related and it's a decision you made and the animal doesn't make it, for example. That's hard. That's something, every homesteader has this happen that I know. I know one who hasn't had it happen, but she was only homesteading for 3 years. Yeah. And it almost happened once, but it's, it's heartbreaking when things like that happen. But if all you think about is that, you don't think about like all the lambs you've helped birth or seen birthed, or all of the chickens that have had a good life on your homestead, or all of the tomatoes you've grown. You may have a disastrous tomato year this year, but last year you did really well. And that's one of those things where looking forward is important. And you need to know what happened and learn from it. But then it's about moving forward.
It's funny. My wife will kill me for saying this, but my wife has successfully waterboarded a chicken to death. She did. She didn't mean to. It wasn't her intent, but I actually give her a hard time about it all the time because she actually held the chicken and waterboarded it to death.
Oh no. What was she trying to do?
Oh, this was very early in our homesteading. And, in the beginning, and I know you know this, but most homesteaders, they get into it like, all right, let's roll. And we're going to tackle all of this. And so she got the advice from somebody else that what she needed to do is rinse the chicken's face and mouth and everything out for whatever it was suffering from. And what started as something very gentle turned into she drowned him.
Yeah.
And she kicks herself for it. Like, she was so sad. She cried. Felt horrible.
Well, especially first. Like,
Yeah.
you haven't lost a bunch of chickens to chicken stupidity at that point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We lost it to human stupidity.
Yeah. Well, that can happen. Or, for me, it's like not keeping up on the removal of chicken litter can lead to disastrous results.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is an overcommitment problem. That never happens on the homestead.
Never.
No.
I get made fun of a lot for my 9,000 unfinished projects.
Yeah. Do you ever do like finish it month?
Yeah, I'm actually try really hard to focus on, okay, go get this done. But for my problem, what happens is life. And so, like, I'll give you an example. I was so excited this year, Nicole. I got to work on my wood shop. I love working with wood. It's one of my favorite things to do. I can build furniture, cabinets. I just love that kind of stuff. So I have a wood shop, and it's been put on the back burner as we have built the farm and the barns and the community centers and all of that stuff. And so I finally got some time. I'm going to go work on it. So as soon as I get started on it, got my scaffolding out. I'm going to get rolling. I'm going to get this thing all buckled down for the winter. I had a battery meltdown in my solar system.
Oh, no.
So now all of my scaffolding, everything that's in the wood shop gets left as it sits so that I can go deal with the next issue, the next problem, the next hurdle. And so for me, it's not that I don't want to finish them. It's that life gets in the way. The goat gets out, the cattle push over the fence, whatever it happens to be from that day, that I have to then turn my attention. And so it took me 2.5 weeks to reinstall a whole new solar system on my property. So that's 2.5 weeks I lost. And then I get done and I got to remember where I'm at on the last one, and so it's just, and I'm not bitching. It's wonderful. I'm living free. I'm doing what I want every day. But at the same time, it's it kind of creates this life of unfinished projects. And another thing we call Sanford Row, a row of pallets that have stuff everywhere when I come from a manicured lawn, and it's hard for me to deal with sometimes, but it's good.
Yeah. That's something about homesteading that I realized has to happen is you talk about getting up and working your butt off all day, and then it's dark, and then you got to figure out dinner, and then you go to bed. There are just days where I'm like, it's 4:00 and we're done.
Yeah.
I'm done for the day, and stuff is just not done.
Yeah.
It is where it is in the state it is in. The only thing I will do is hang my laundry up so it doesn't smell like mold at this point, if there's laundry in the machine. But I've learned to do that recently because I was just not mentally as acute as I needed to be because of the exhaustion.
Yeah.
And it's not bad to work hard, but it is bad to totally get out of balance, I think.
And I think then you add community and it adds a whole nother layer to that, and it's funny, I used to think homesteading was this singular thing. And then I learned that off-grid and homesteading now creates another dynamic. And then community homesteading and off-grid living creates another dynamic. And then you add that even further to, I want to build a town. So now the local political narrative, healthcare, the schools, what they're teaching kids. I mean, all of these things become another layer in this incredible map that again, pulls you in 27,000 different directions all the time.
So by I want to build a town, are you taking over a town, or are you like, we need to have a schoolhouse, we need to have a jail, we need to have a civic center? What are you talking about there?
Yeah, no, it's not like that. So when we talk about building a town, what we're really talking about is buy up all the land you can buy up. We here in my particular county, we're approaching 2,000 acres now. And eventually I'd like that to be 40,000 acres, because with that, what I get to do is control the local political narrative. With that, what I get to do is have an influence on what's taught to kids. With that, I can do a lot of things. But to your other question, one of the things we have been debating is building a school. And, our community, we have our own community center, which we do a lot of things at. So I already have the building. I already have those things. So we're having a lot of conversations about it. But again, it gets down to another problem, which is who manages it. I only have so many hours in the day. I can't do all of them, and so that gets into your hurdles a little bit. But we don't have any urge to have a jail or our own convenience store. I think one thing we'd love to have happen is that every homestead builds a building that's community focused. I've got a good friend of mine who's a teacher, and she's shown some interest in building a library, just a small building that's full of books that people can come check out. So some of that stuff, but no, to the bigger question, we don't have any urge to have a jail.
Well, I mean, not that every community needs a jail, but then when you need a jail, you need a jail. That's the that's the problem, right?
Yeah. More of a thought town,
Yeah.
a town focused on a belief.
Well, and so I have another friend who is building a planned neighborhood. They started with a large piece of acreage, and it's a membership based thing. So it's a little less ownership based. I think maybe you own there are some core homestead plots on it. And one of her core philosophies is we are here to add to the community around us.
Yes.
And to the town, and to pay the property taxes on the land. We are not trying to get out of paying our property taxes. Like, we don't want to be seen as those weird hippies out there, who need to be targeted for some reason. And I thought that was a really healthy way to do it, because a lot of people hear individual sovereignty and they think, okay, so I'm going to opt out of paying all taxes. Well, if you don't buy anything and you don't pay or earn money officially, you don't pay, that's opting out of taxes. But at the same time, if you become the person who doesn't have tags on your car in your county, who gets pulled over and educates the police on what your sovereign rights are, you are also creating an environment of hostility with your local area. And so I'm like, where do you see the balance there?
Yeah, well, I think it's a journey. I think you start in the place that you're at, and you're completely tied to the system, right? And then as time goes on, you try to lessen it. But I can tell you from right here in my county, and we are hammering our local officials right now, our community and the people around us. But part of that, to me, is the series of interlocking circles. We have our community of homesteaders right here, but then there's also the community outside of that that's local, that is the other farmers that don't come to the events, or the local school teachers. And so we want to try to influence them in a way that doesn't say my way is the only way, that says freedom is the beginning building block for all of it. And if we all focus on freedom, it'll be better for everybody. But then it takes outreach. I'm doing an interview on Friday, the day before I come to Self-Reliance Festival. I'm interviewing the commissioners in the courthouse to put them on record. And I'm going to do it. And, we're Thursday here. What is today? Today's Wednesday. So tomorrow we're going to the planning meeting on this big solar farm they're trying to put in, because we're trying to push back on it. And so I think it's a spectrum. I think ultimately where I would love to get is that the commissioners and the locals here push hard for, let's talk about property rights, for example. We're going to have to pay property rights. I don't see how property tax. I don't know how we're going to get out of it. However, let's make it where anybody that retires no longer pays property tax, so old people don't have to lose their homes. Let's do some common sense things. And I think if we work together, we can get to some of those. But I don't see how you get away from not working with your local officials, the local sheriff, the local schools. I've always been kind of anti-homeschool, and this might surprise a lot of people, not because of homeschool itself, but because then all you're taking care of is your own kids. What happens to this next generation? What happens to the people that we leave behind to lead all of this forward? They're not getting it. So what good was it? So anyway, that was a long answer to it. I think it's a spectrum, and I think you have to involve your community.
Yeah, I came to the sad conclusion I have to start going to county commission meetings.
Yep.
About 3 months ago, and the problem is I do sing in a choir too, and they conflict, so I have to figure out how that's going to work. But in order for us to accomplish what we want to accomplish here, I need to go to the meetings, A, to see what's going on, B, to develop better relationships with some of the people who are leaders in the community around me, so that I'm not, again, the weird hippie from Oregon who came in and is, doing all this regenerative agriculture stuff, which, now that we're not calling it permaculture anymore, it's a little bit easier to sell, but it's still not an easy sell. But then I keep finding other homesteaders and other farms in the area I never knew existed, and I've been here 18 years, who are doing what we're doing. And we are not talking to each other. And the minute I started saying, hey, let's get together and have a potluck, all of a sudden people who raise their sheep exactly like I do show up.
Yeah, well, going is critical. I think there's two parts to this that I would tell everybody in the audience tonight. The first part is if you don't go, they slide stuff in. And I'll give you an example of this. But the other thing, I think you have to build a healthy discourse relationship with those officials. They have to understand that you will stand up. You have to understand that we're coming. If you violate our rights, we're going to be here. We're going to go to the news. We're going to put billboards up. We're going to get involved. But if you're willing to work towards a place where we can all live a better life, I'll be right by your side defending you. And that dynamic is, I think, critical. Here in my county, earlier this year, they passed Resolution 2516, which said that the taxman, county employees, or contractors could enter your property without your consent if they believed there was a violation of taxes, permitting, or sewer. Okay. Now, these commissioners passed this on a Monday. It wasn't even on the agenda. They passed it, voted on it, slipped it right through. Had we not been there and caught wind of it, we may still not know that it happened until someday they enter your property. And so because we found out about it, I contacted my friends at the Justice League. We talked to the Attorney General. We got the news involved. We got everybody involved. And they were so upset after a little while of fighting and pushing back. The commissioner that I'm going to interview said, hey, you know what? This just isn't worth it. Yeah. Let's just rescind it. We'll find another way. And they rescinded it and backed it off. And since then, I've been super cordial to them. Well, till the solar farm thing came up. But my point is that you've got to have a healthy relationship with them that says, I will fight back. You're not going to run me over. But I will support you when you do the right thing. That's critical. But if you don't have somebody going to the meetings, how will you ever know what actually happens? We actually have somebody who goes to every single meeting and records them, which is a whole nother funny story, because when it started, the commissioners actually tried to kick us out of the meeting saying you couldn't record in the courthouse. Mm-hmm. So then we got a hold of the sheriff, and the sheriff pulled them out of the meeting into a separate room and informed them that the First Amendment gives me the right to free press. And because it's a taxpayer building, they cannot stop me from filming in there. And the commissioner comes walking around the corner pouting, come on in. And, so it all starts with being involved in understanding your rights and understanding what's going on. But those things are critical, I think, to the success of these communities.
Yeah, and that is an argument for setting up your local reporting blog, by the way, so that you look more like your reporting. That's something that a lot of folks did here in Tennessee. And I have not tried to come in and record since they moved where the meetings are, and you have to go through security. And I think they're now going to try to say you can't bring your cell phones in.
Yeah, that would be a complete violation of your First Amendment right.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. If you're talking on any place that is paid for by taxpayer dollars, you have the right to exercise your free press, which is a right given to you by the First Amendment. They cannot interfere with that. Now, what they can say is this is a restricted area. What they can say, stuff, you can't go into a courtroom while a trial is going on. But as long as you're in there, they have no choice but to let you in. I would absolutely throw a fit. I would throw a huge fit.
They'll let you in. You just can't bring your recording device, which is your cell phone.
Except you have the right to free press. Your First Amendment guarantees it.
And you can bring you can bring a different recording device if that's really the thing. Like, what's the problem with the cell phone? I don't know. Do they think it's a bomb? I don't know what they're doing. Like, I don't even know what the objection is. I understand why they don't want it in the courtrooms, because it's going to ring, but
so there are some rules out there that they have a right to keep a cordial meeting, and that if there's a distraction, that they can remove them. But at the end of the day, your personal recording device is attached to you. It is part of your first. We are born with the right of free press. You don't need credentials. If anyone ever asked you, where's your credentials? Tell them I have the Constitution. Read the First Amendment, dumbass.
I just printed credentials and laminated them and put them on little. I don't have to have that conversation.
Yep. So, yeah, I think really the moral of the story, have a healthy relationship with your officials. And what I mean by healthy is they have to know that if they violate your rights, you'll be there. And that you'll spend any money, you don't care what the risk is, come after me. Come on. Whatever you got to do, tough guy. I am not backing down. And as soon as they realize that, my experience is they, have a tendency to try to work with you a little more.
Yep. Yeah. This says recording in a courtroom could possibly be considered a way to dox jurors for potential. Okay. I get that. Well, and I know that there are different recording practices for courts being in session, and also they go the commissioners and other legal meetings can go into special session when they're discussing things like salaries or other things, and they close everybody out for that.
Yeah, that's executive session, and they can do that, but those laws are even very specific.
Yeah.
You can't talk about personal issues, but anything that would be in the normal course of business of a county commissioner should be in a public meeting. And if they don't do that, you can file things like CORA requests in Kansas, which would be Kansas Open Records Act, or COMA, Kansas Open Meetings Act. And you can request those documents. You can file complaints at the Attorney General's office, which I've done all of those things. But this is kind of what I mean by you have to have that healthy relationship. They have to know you are willing to take it to the next step.
And why this is even worth investing your time is, as a person who worked in public policy for 14 years at the state level and also nationally, is that on the local level, you can actually change things. And if you look at how policy is changing to the left across the country towards, I hate the left, white, right paradigm. So let's just say towards more totalitarian controls, probably a better way to explain it. The way that's happening is they run testing grounds on the local level, local county and local city levels, to see if we make these changes, do they work for our long-term goal? And then when it does, they try to get a lot of localities involved in a state, and then they make changes at the state level. And then everybody's culturally used to accepting those overreaches and the fight back. The people who would fight back don't realize it's happening until it gets to the state level. There's no reason that can't be done in the other direction. That's why the Free State Project exists in New Hampshire, to do, to do exactly that. Like, have so many people in one state, they just can't pass stuff. And they've had some local successes there. And it sounds like you've had some local successes as well.
Yeah. And it's about being intentional. And, we go, the question of why is it important? I have to admit to the audience, I no longer think there's a political solution to our problems. I have not felt that way in a long, long time, but I'm really referring to the federal level, and maybe even into the state level in a lot of ways. But if every single community, every single township, every single county, we could make the state governments and the federal governments irrelevant if we control what happens to us. So I'm super involved locally, don't really care much for the federal, at the federal level, because again, what can I do about it? Right? What I can affect is right here in front of me, but that ain't going to work either unless more of us do it.
Yeah. And getting to know your sheriff is a really good idea.
Yes.
How do you do that, Tag? How do you get to know your sheriff?
Yeah, actually, you know what? Go to public meetings, because they're quite often there. And what's funny is the more people that go, the more police show up, because those officials are scared. And I actually have fun of it. Thursday, when I walk into that meeting, I promise you, I will walk right up to the sheriff and I will say, "Hey, Sheriff Morse, what are they scared of?" I will use those exact words. And I do it every single time. And I think over time, when you get up there and you speak, you're articulate and you can cite it and you understand the rules. And the more you do that, I think the more they gain an appreciation for you and a respect. I went from not having a relationship with my sheriff 5 years ago at all. I mean, I knew him, to today, we actually have conversations. We'll lean up against the wall in a meeting together and chit chat. And I think it's time and pressure, and making my relationship with him has to be intentional and important. Don't be disrespectful. Don't be a dick, don't offer him a donut. I mean, be kind of respectful. And I think most of them will warm right up to you and see you as a solution and not as a problem.
I think the other thing is, don't be afraid to talk to officials because they're some sort of famous person. Like I got seated at a table with all of the state legislators at I don't remember what kind of dinner it was in our county, because I wasn't afraid to be seated there, and they didn't know who to seat there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'll sit there, because they're just going to be yucking it up the whole time, just like everybody else is. They're people, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and I do. And it doesn't help to look intimidated by them.
Yeah.
And that's this with coming up to YouTube personalities. Like if you haven't met Tag and you see him at Self-Reliance Festival, don't be afraid to walk up to him and say, hey, can I have a picture or talk to him? Like that's literally what he's there for.
Yeah, that's what I want. That's the reason I'm
That's
to be
why
honest.
he's coming, you know. Same with Brooke Whipple, who's going to be speaking. Like it's just, we see a lot of people kind of starstruck, and that's, I understand the feeling, but find a way to take the next step. Have a question to ask or introduce yourself. Or even if you've already met him, introduce yourself again, just in case it was 4 years ago and he forgot your name. That
Right.
happens.
Which is likely.
Mhm. Very likely. So,
Yeah.
but what does all of this have to do with opting out of the system?
Well, it has everything to do with it. I mean, at the end of the day, which one of the 18 points we talk about? I mean, community, you'll never get there alone. Let's start there. You're not going to opt out without them. I'm telling you, you cannot do it. And you cannot have an existence, anything beyond that of medieval without community. Now I've had a lot of people make the argument to me, oh, I could live in the woods by myself. All right, good luck with that. And you're not going to have any, quality of life. But I mean, I think if I was going to sum up the whole entire thing is that what we as people are really going to have to go do is, first of all, take responsibility. You got to take responsibility for your own life, who you're dependent upon, who you're asking permission from. It's funny. And a lot of my speeches that I've used these words where everything that happens to me is my fault, good and bad. And you have to start there because that doesn't let the other person off the hook. And I could give you personal examples if you want them, but what it says is I'm taking accountability for my decisions that led me to where I am. And whether that's good or bad, nobody's coming to help us. And not only do we have to be okay with that, we have to be able to say, I prefer it that way. Right. When we're dependent upon them, we're dependent. I had a fire at my house 2 years ago, and man, it was a good one. Came across the field, got onto my property, fire up underneath my fuel tanks. I got these big 500-gallon fuel tanks. I got 4-foot tall fire underneath my fuel tanks. I never called the fire department. I called the community. People came rushing in. We put the fire out. No big deal. That was the end of it. So, I think it starts with that. I think it starts about being brutally honest with yourself. Right. I mean, if you can't look at yourself and say, hey, we were talking about mental illness earlier. If you can't look at yourself and say, hey, I need help, you're never going to reach that, that level of freedom. And so I think personal accountability, being honest with yourself, getting rid of your personas. We talk about being radically honest. You're not who you portray. I try really, really hard on my YouTube channel to be the exact same guy I am every single day, no different. And so I think there's just a lot of stuff I think that goes into that. I'm going to talk a lot about this at Self-Reliance. My speech will be focused around exiting the system from a mental perspective and the things that we can do, to ourselves. But I'm going to tell you, it starts with radical accountability, being honest with yourself at a radical level, and then building community. I think would be the 3 building blocks, Nicole, that I would give anybody to actually get out of the system.
Yeah, and that mental break from the system is the most important step.
Yeah.
Because it's our perception. I was telling the story the other day where I almost didn't do a commercial coffee business because it was going to cost me $20,000 to get equipment to do it. Mm-hmm. And at the time, that $20,000 seemed like an unattainable amount of money to get to buy the thing. And somebody came up, and then when I said that I wasn't going to do it, I realized how much I love roasting coffee, right? And I thought, I think I'm lying to people, but I still don't see how I'm going to get that $20,000. And somebody who was listening to me speak came up afterwards and said, I know a roaster that's commercial you can buy for $3,500 that's smaller. And I will introduce you to the people who sell it.
Yeah.
And that's how that was the first step. I was like, okay, there's a step between, $1,000 and $20,000. And then I can use that to get the money for the next step.
Yeah, that's amazing, Nicole. You didn't say, can I? You said, how can I?
Right.
That's a fundamental shift in our brain, right? That's a fundamental shift of there are no walls. There's only workarounds. That's all we get. And, everything's recoverable. Well, and then there's a whole nother thing, which is money is the land of make-believe, and it doesn't really matter anyway. So, which, I've said that for years and years. So if you're not willing to risk it, you'll never gain anything.
Yeah. Well, and now I'm looking at a project that I think will cost $1 to $2 million.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the coffee, right? And do I have $1 to $2 million to spend on it? Nope. Nope. Have we talked about how it's going to happen? Yep. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. It's like, well, what's the $100,000 step?
Right.
And then the $200,000, and who else wants to be involved, and what are they going to bring to the table, and can we, leverage that, and how can we make it monetize itself so that it brings more money in to get to the bigger plan. And maybe we never get to the bigger plan. It's not really about getting to the bigger plan. It's about creating the environment and the opportunities for people to thrive. That's really what the next project is about.
Well, and I think isn't entrepreneurship again a foundational block of freedom, and that one thing needs more than anything is entrepreneurs. Go write that, go start that movement, go start that company, do it. What are you going to risk? You're going to be right where you're at. It's the worst thing. Go do it.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So I got a question here. Where in Tennessee are you? I'm in Lancaster, Tennessee, is the town that I'm officially zip coded in, which is near a big Army Corps lake called Center Hill Lake. So,
and we're going to you're doing the festival at Birdsong Marina this year, right? Which is that still in Camden?
Yeah, it's in Camden, Tennessee. Birdsong Marina, 5 to 10 minute drive from Special Operations Equipment. They're going to be open, so you can go buy stuff, and it's going to be a great event. It's we've got I don't know if you've seen all of the pieces at this point, but we've been trying to make an experience that all ages can enjoy.
Good.
So we added Self-Reliance Kids last year with Becky Cook and Alan Booker. You know him, right? Yeah. So Alan Booker, when I was going to have him speak, and he said, what I really want to do is an SRF Teens program. So he and Opalyn are doing SRF Youth or SRF Teens, which is, approximately 13, 14 to 19. They are off in a separate tent in the campground area with an entire curriculum that starts with how you're going to start the fire so we can process the chicken and cook the chicken and and with plenty of room for discussion. He's run youth programs before. And I was really excited about that because it's always been this, we do the kids and they get to a certain level. And now what? Like the kids program isn't very fun anymore. The adults are talking about whatever the adults are talking to. And there's sort of this in-between space where, teens want to maybe have a vendor booth where they're selling something, or they don't want to be there at all. They'd rather be in the device. So I was pretty stoked when he came out with that. And that's all just included with your ticket. So you don't have to pay more for that program. And we just have you fill out a form to get them in so we know who the parents are. We know if there's any allergies we need to be aware of, that sort of thing. All the things that come up when you do those.
Well, this is cool. I mean, we all talk about wanting to live a sustainable life. How are you ever going to be sustainable if you don't cater to the youth? It's not sustainable. It's just not. You have to cater to the youth because they're who are going to take this beyond after, we're old and can barely get out of a chair. So I applaud you for it. I think we should cater more and more and more to the kids. Our community building that we built this last year, one of the very first things I did after the community building was up was build a playground. So the kids had something to do and they can swim and they can fish and they can play in the playground and that, because I want to cater to them.
Yeah. Well, and, I talked to Joel Salatin about this. I said, how do you build enduring, ongoing, generational continuity in your farm? And he said, you put them in charge before you wish you're ready to give up. Is what you do, because if you can't trust your kid at 25 to 30 years old to run the farm, you're never going to trust them.
Yeah.
And they never have a chance to make mistakes while you're there to help them with any mistakes that happen, which is going to happen no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So that one was insightful for me because we actually have a continuity problem here in that I do not have children. So I have nieces. Do my nieces want to take it, or is it going to be somebody else from the community here? I suspect it won't be my nieces, although one of them may be interested enough. I suspect it will be somebody from the community here if we want to keep this going as a regenerative food growing operation. So,
again, I would encourage, you can't be sustainable if you don't focus on the kids. It is impossible. It will die at some day. And Hippocrates Garden, who's in my chat, I don't know if you see both chats, I'm not sure, but there you go. Others are prioritizing your kids. Why aren't we? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They should be number one.
Yes.
Yeah. And they are capable of so much and that's the thing that has been trained. That's another one that's been trained out in our culture, where you think about how old some of the people were who fought in the revolution here. really young.
I spent a lot of time thinking about how did the boomers and Gen X fail so miserably? Because really,
we were rabidly individualistically independent, right?
right. Yeah, and we've gotten us. How do we? The world do we get out? And it's going to take the kids. It's going to take those next generations. I have 2 boys who are millennials, and I talk to them all the time about this. About you guys have to pick up the mantle. This. I'm turning old. I'm turning old fast. You guys have to be willing to take the charge and take the risk. Yeah. I hope they do someday. We'll see.
I think they will. So as much as Gen Z gets the workaround on on their qualities as individuals, I see the most hope in that age group.
Yeah.
Like the younger millennial, and then the Zs they're making hard choices and they're doing hard things. And that's what it starts with, right?
Yeah.
So they may not build a world the way I would build it. They probably won't, but they're ready to build. Some of them aren't, but some of them are. And those are the ones who will.
Yeah, I hope they do. And I hope that we can continue to maintain, no, that's the wrong way to say that. I hope we can get back our liberties and our freedoms, because even the idea of freedom is an illusion today in a lot of ways, from a consumerism perspective, or from a health perspective, or an education perspective, or, I can go on and on and on, but I hope that they focus in on that individual thing, and we can lead by example by showing them that it matters. And I hope that they do something with it.
Yeah. Yeah, here's an interesting one. I frequently have conversations with my parents. I'm 59. They believe in me, but they don't trust me. They won't really turn over the farm to me till they die. That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Daniel Salatin's already running Polyface.
Yeah.
His dad is a resource. What Joel say when I saw him, he said, the one thing I'm still doing is the grazing schedule and where they're going to be on which paddock in which order. But he doesn't necessarily need to do that anymore either. And he said, it's based on how the grass grows. So I may not be this week at that, but it's the order that it goes in. So
they say good times build weak men. And, maybe it was the good times that, came after the Great Depression and all of that built the boomers to be selfish, which then put us, the Generation X, out till the streetlights came on. Maybe it was some, combination thereof that did it. But, I've read many studies where, 55% of the wealth was controlled by boomers, and then 25% by Gen X, and now millennials are controlling 6% of the wealth worldwide. I hope they can do something to change it.
Right. Well, building wealth in an off-grid or land-based way, it's a different kind of wealth too. So when you say money is an illusion, but I have all this land. So
asset is not an illusion. Money is an illusion.
Right.
And I think this brings up a really good point here too. You want to go get free, redefine success. Sit down and say, what does success really look like? Not by someone else's, let's stop outsourcing our decisions somewhere else, right? What does it really look like for me? And I'm going to tell you, like in my life, the single most important thing in my life is my relationship with my wife. It is above and beyond everything else that I have. And but I'll tell you, in my earlier career of my life, my number one motivator in life was to climb the chain, to be the man, to have the things. And it cost me dearly.
It will. And I think that's an important part of opting out of the system and defining success, is if you can stop listening to what everybody else defines success at, sit down with your spouse, if you have one, and define what success for you looks like. From what the characteristics are. That's actually how I start people towards developing a life vision when we do the My Three Things thing. That's where you have the breakthroughs. Because for me, it's not about how big is my bank account, but it is based in having enough assets that they are working for me, right? Yep. And that actually looks like I'm working for them a lot on the homestead, but but when we had this switch from wanting to bring more people in here and having that strong call to do both a nomadic thing with an ownership based thing, we walked around the woods and said, this is where a central lodge would go. And in order to do that, I had to buy that 70 acres, which we could do if the person would sell it to me. And she has agreed to sell it to me at one point, but has never done paperwork, right? 5 years later. So I sent her an email, no answer. And I remember looking over at Tactical and saying, you know what? We already have a central lodge.
Mhm.
We have a house next door that we've done as a long-term rental that would perform perfectly as a central lodge. It's got big high ceilings. It's got some space. It has a teaching kitchen. There's a bedroom we can put teachers in if they're coming through, or we can whatever. It has a huge basement and that I use as a classroom once a year. Why don't we just use it more?
Yeah. Another great example of not can I, but how can I?
Yeah. It's like, well, how can we use what's here to do the thing? And then the thing will happen as it grows. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where if you get too wrapped up in defining success as something specific, a dollar amount, percentage of stocks versus real estate versus whatever, are you really happy though?
Yeah.
Are you really happy? And what does happiness look like? And what's really important, like your relationship with your wife,
Yep.
or how many square feet your house is.
Yeah. My relationship with my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes some extra square can help with that though.
Yes. Yes. And she would agree with that, actually. I'm a handful. But if you could
I'm
only
shocked to hear that, Tag.
No, I am incredibly blessed, but I do think 90% of the freedom fights between your ears, and just getting yourself accustomed to it. Again, happiness, what an interesting word. And if you asked, I bet you 100 people what makes you happy, 80 of them couldn't answer the question.
Yeah. That's true.
I bet,
And that's okay. There's a lot of questions you can ask yourself to get there. What do I love? Where am I when I'm happy? What do I hate doing? Where am I when I'm most miserable? Why for all of those things? The why is what you're getting to, right? Like, why am I miserable? People hate their jobs. Why do you hate your job? Is it because you don't have power over your day-to-day decisions?
Right.
Or is it the thing you're doing? Is it the people you work with? Is it that you have to get in your car and drive there every day? There's lots of different reasons why that could be. And when you get that, what the biggest mind switch that happens is if you do remain at a job for another 5 years while you work towards where you want to be, it becomes your tool towards that other thing, and you hate it a little bit less.
100%. 100%. And that's just being intentional, right? That's just saying, I'm headed in this direction. Everything else is the means in which will get me there.
Yep.
We did it. We absolutely did it. And I'm so thankful that we did.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun watching your journey, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at SRF. Hopefully we'll get to sit down and talk a bit while you're there.
Yep. I'd love to do that, Nicole, but I've watched you at many festivals.
I'd like to say this one's going to be different.
You'll be running 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Probably. Carrie will be there too, though. So I'll be only running 500,000 miles an hour. But yeah, sometime I should just come up and visit you is what I should do.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Like I said, I've had, nothing but great memories of all of the times I've been down there, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm actually going to Dallas after that, but
cool.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm super excited. I hope to meet a whole bunch of cool people and, maybe help them through their journey a little bit. Maybe they can help me with mine.
Yeah. Well, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube under Life Done Free. My contact information is in the description, so that would be pretty easy. I'm on lifedonefree.com. I'm on Facebook under Life Done Free. I'm on just find Life Done Free. And I'm pretty responsive, so feel free to reach out to me.
I don't actually know Tag's last name, just for the record. His last name on my spreadsheet is Life Done Free, so...
Yep, that's how they named me. No.
I mean, I think you've told me your last name before. I didn't remember it. So you're Tag Life Done Free.
Yeah, it's all.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What everybody knows, so it works.
Well, guys, get your tickets, selfreliancefestival.com. 20% off. SRF is the coupon code. I did forget to say that at the beginning. Spags talked me into that last week, just so you know. And it was supposed to end Monday, but I was like, forget it. We'll just go through to the end. Like, let's get in person. The way you beat AI, the way that you beat all of the division that's happening after Charlie Kirk, the way you get out of this is to stop looking at that stuff, first of all. Get in person, put your phone away, and let's have a conversation. You'll be surprised how many people agree with you more than they disagree with you, even on the other side of whichever aisle you have defined yourself on. And when you get to that healthy space in your head, that's when real change starts happening. And that's actually why we do Self-Reliance. That's literally why we do Self-Reliance Festival. I mean, sure, it's cool to learn how to talk over an HF antenna to Japan or whatever, but
Right.
it's also it's more about talking to everybody there. So hope to see you guys in a week and a half. And Tag, I'm looking forward to seeing you in person again.
Yes, ma'am. And I will be there on time. I'll be there Saturday morning.
Awesome. See you then.
Yeah, see you guys.
Make it a great week.